The first day we were here, I got a bagel and cream cheese, and it was $12. So I definitely had a little bit of sticker shock.
So I've been a couple of times, and it is much higher than even last summer.
Remember when you could fly to Vegas with $500 in your pocket and live like a king for the weekend? What the hell happened to that Vegas? You know, there's a question I can't get out of my head. It's a simple one. Remember when you could fly to Vegas with $500 in your pocket and live like a king for the weekend? Not a pretend king, not some Instagram-filtered fantasy, but a real, honest-to-God, steak and potatoes American king. Remember that feeling? The weight of the cash in your pocket felt like possibility. It felt like freedom. What the hell happened to that Vegas? I was talking to a guy, let's call him Mark. He's a retired union electrician from Ohio. For 25 straight years, he and his wife, Carol, made a pilgrimage to Las Vegas. Every October, same weekend. It wasn't about getting rich. It was about getting away. It was their one weekend a year to feel like the high rollers they saw in the movies. He told me about their first trip, back in 2094. They stayed at a place that's probably been imploded twice by now. The room cost them $30 a night, and when they checked in, the guy at the desk handed them a coupon book. Not for 10% off a t-shirt, but for a $9 prime rib dinner for two, for a free roll of quarters, for a shrimp cocktail that cost 99 cents and came in a glass the size of a small fishbowl. Mark, he leaned in when he told me this, like it was a secret. He said, "You have to understand, it wasn't just cheap. It felt generous." That's the word he used. Generous. The whole city, he said. It was built on a promise. And the promise was this: we know you're here to gamble. We know you're probably going to lose. The house always wins, right? But while you're here, trying to beat us, we're going to take care of you. The drinks will be free as long as you're sitting at this table. The food will be cheap and plentiful. We'll give you a clean, comfortable room for less than a motel in the middle of nowhere. We want you here. We value your business. It was a handshake deal. An unspoken contract between the city of Neon and the American working class. For years, Mark and Carol lived on that promise. They'd play the nickel slots for hours, nursing free Jack and Cokes. A pit boss who saw Mark playing blackjack for $10 a hand for a few hours would come over, tap him on the shoulder and just say, "Your room is taken care of, sir." Just like that. A compliment, a sign of respect. They weren't whales, they weren't spending a fortune, but they were there. They were participating in the grand, gaudy spectacle of it all, and for that, they were rewarded. They'd leave town down a couple $100, but with a full stomach, a slight hangover, and a story to tell. They'd come home feeling like they'd won. And then, one year, the promise started to feel flimsy. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 tiny paper cuts. Mark remembers checking out of their hotel, around 2008 or 2009, and seeing a new line on the bill, resort fee, $35 a day. He asked the clerk what it was for. "For the pool, sir. For the internet. For the gym." Mark looked at her confused. "But we didn't use any of that. We paid for the room. Isn't that part of the room?" The clerk just gave him that dead-eyed corporate smile. "It's mandatory, sir." That mandatory fee was the first crack in the foundation. It was the house saying, "The handshake deal is off. We're putting it in writing now, and the fine print is not in your favor." Soon after, the cocktail waitress stopped coming around so often. When she did, the drink was smaller, weaker. The bartender would watch you, making sure you were feeding enough money into the video poker machine to earn that free drink. It stopped feeling like generosity and started feeling transactional. Calculated. They traded soul for spreadsheets. Then came the $20 cocktail. Not at some rooftop club with a celebrity DJ, at the main casino bar. The same bar where a Jack and Coke used to be the cost of a $5 chip slid across the bar top. Suddenly, having a couple of drinks with your wife before dinner was a $100 proposition. The cheap steak dinners vanished. The 99-cent shrimp cocktail became a $10 appetizer. The free parking that was as fundamental to Vegas as neon signs and bad decisions? Gone. Replaced by a gate and a machine demanding $20, $30, $40 a day. Mark told me about their last trip. A couple of years ago. The $500 that used to last them a whole weekend was gone before the end of the first night. Not on gambling, on the room fee, on parking, on 2 sandwiches and a couple of beers by the pool. They found themselves standing in the middle of the casino floor, the same lights flashing, the the same bells ringing, but the entire feeling was different. It felt predatory. The city wasn't their gracious, winking host anymore. It was a machine, perfectly calibrated to extract every possible dollar from their pockets before they even sat down at a card table. He looked at me, and his voice was quiet. "It's not our town anymore," he said. "They built this paradise on the backs of guys like me. And then one day, they just decided we weren't the kind of people they wanted anymore." That's where the real hurt is. It's not just that Vegas got expensive. It's that it broke its promise. So, how does a city break a promise? How does an entire town, built on a specific kind of welcome, suddenly change the locks on the front door? You can't point to a single day on the calendar. It wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a drift. A slow, quiet, tectonic shift in the city's soul. And the answer, like most things in modern America, doesn't have to do with showgirls or mobsters. It has to do with Wall Street. I met a guy, Jimmy, in a bar off the Strip. The kind of place where the bartenders still remember your name and the video poker machines are loose enough to let you drink for free all afternoon, if you know what you're doing. Jimmy's been a blackjack dealer in this town for 35 years. He's got what they call the dealer's hands, smooth, methodical, and they've seen everything. Seen fortunes won and lost, seen marriages fall apart and proposals made right there on the green felt. He started back when the casinos were still run by, well, casino guys. Men who had come up through the ranks, who had run their own illegal games in back rooms before things went corporate. They were gamblers at heart. They understood the psychology of the player, the intoxicating allure of risk, because they lived it. Back then, Jimmy told me, swirling the ice in his glass, the philosophy was simple. The casino floor, the tables, and the slots. That was the business. Everything else was just marketing. He explained that the entire ecosystem of a hotel casino was designed for one purpose: to get a player to the table and keep them there, happy and comfortable, for as long as humanly possible. The cheap rooms, the prime rib buffets, the free-flowing booze, it was all just part of the cost of doing business. It was the bait and the trap. My job, he said, wasn't just to deal the cards right. A machine can do that. My job was to be part of the experience. We were hosts. We were entertainers. The pit boss. He was the king of his little kingdom. He had power. Real power. If he saw you were a good guy, playing steady, having fun, even if you were only a $10 player, he could make your trip. He could comp your room, your food, send you to a show. No algorithm, no computer printout, just a gut feeling. He was making an investment in you, because he knew if you went home happy, you'd be back next year with your friends. That was the old Vegas. It was a business of relationships, of gut feelings. It was a hustle, for sure, but it was a hustle with a human face. And then the MBAs came to town. It started in the late 80s and accelerated through the 90s. The junk bond kings and the corporate raiders, they looked at Las Vegas and they didn't see a neon oasis. They saw an undervalued asset. They saw inefficiency. They saw all that free stuff, the rooms, the food, the shows, not as marketing, but as leaving money on the table. The old casino families and the mob-connected owners were pushed out, one by one. They were replaced by publicly traded corporations. Caesars Entertainment, MGM Resorts International, companies with shareholders and quarterly earnings reports. And the men running these companies weren't gamblers. They were executives. They answered to analysts in New York, not to wise guys in the desert. Jimmy saw the change right there on the floor. First, they brought in the consultants, he said with a wry laugh. Guys in suits who'd never placed a bet in their life walking around with clipboards. Suddenly, everything had a metric. Everything was about optimizing revenue streams and monetizing assets. The pit boss's power was stripped away. He couldn't make a decision based on his gut anymore. Every comp had to be justified by a player's theoretical worth, a cold calculation spit out by a computer that tracked every single bet you made. The human element was systematically erased, and the new philosophy trickled down into every corner of the property. The hotel wasn't just a place for players to sleep anymore, it had to become its own profit center, hence the resort fee. The restaurants weren't just there to feed gamblers. They had to attract foodies and charge Michelin star prices. The bars, the pools, the theaters, every square foot of the property was now expected to bleed cash. The casino floor was no longer the sole engine of the business. It was just one department among many. Jimmy put it best. He said, "They used to think of the casino as a mousetrap. The cheap hotel was the cheese. Now, they charge you for the cheese. They charge you for the privilege of entering the trap. And then they charge you for the air you breathe while you're in it. The pressure from Wall Street is relentless. It demands infinite, predictable growth. And gambling profits, they're not predictable. They go up, they go down. But you know what is predictable? Charging every single guest a $40 resort fee. Charging every single car $25 to park. That's guaranteed income. That's the kind of thing that looks great on a quarterly report. So, the reason our friend Mark, the electrician from Ohio, feels like Vegas doesn't want him anymore is because, in a cold corporate sense, it doesn't. The new business model isn't built for the $10 blackjack player hoping for a comped room. It's built for the person who will drop 10 grand on a VIP bottle service package without blinking. They're not in the gambling business anymore. They're in the extraction business. And they're extracting that value from everyone they can. They didn't just change the prices. They changed the entire game. So here we are, standing in the rubble of that broken promise. What does the new Vegas, the Wall Street Vegas, actually feel like for the average person? For the Marks and Carols of the world? It feels like a hustle. But not the old kind of hustle. Not the fun, winking, us against the house kind of gamble. This is a new hustle. It's a relentless, systematic, corporate shakedown. And you can't win. You can't even opt out. Think about it. The moment you arrive, the clock starts ticking. If you drive, you pay to park your car in the giant, soulless garage of the very hotel you're paying to stay in. Strike one. You get to the front desk, and that mandatory resort fee we talked about gets tacked on, a phantom charge for services you may never use, inflating your room rate by 30, 40, sometimes 50%. Strike two. You finally get to your room, thirsty after your flight, and you eye the bottle of water on the desk. You know better. You know that's not a welcome gift. That's a $10 landmine waiting to go off on your final bill. You go down to the casino bar for a celebratory drink. You order a beer, and when the bill comes, it's not just the $16 for the beer itself. There's a venue fee, a service surcharge, a tax on top of the tax, disguised in fine print, because the bar is technically part of an entertainment district that is the casino itself. You're paying a cover charge to sit in the very place that's supposed to want your business. Strike three, and it's everywhere. The ATM fee is $9. The slice of pizza is $12. The cheap, glorious buffets that were once a cornerstone of the Vegas experience? They're either gone, replaced by celebrity chef food halls, or they now cost $70 a person. The old Vegas wanted your gambling money. The new Vegas wants all of your money before you've even had a chance to place a bet. The house doesn't just want to win anymore. It wants to own the whole damn street. It's a city that has perfected the art of making you feel poor. But here's the thing. This isn't just a story about Las Vegas. You can't build walls around this city. The forces that transformed this neon fantasy are the same forces that have been reshaping the entire American landscape for the past 40 years. What happened here is just the American dream, played out under Klieg lights with a 2-drink minimum. Vegas was once the great equalizer. It was a democratic sort of decadence. A plumber from Chicago, a teacher from Arizona, a retired couple from Florida, they could all come here and, for a few days, taste a life of glamour and luxury that was otherwise reserved for the wealthy. It was the physical manifestation of the middle-class promise. Work hard, and you too can have a small slice of the good life. It was affordable luxury. And that idea, affordable luxury, the accessible middle ground, is precisely what has been systematically dismantled in our country. We've seen it in air travel, which went from a glamorous experience to a cattle call of baggage fees and non-existent legroom. We see it in higher education, where a college degree went from a passport to the middle class to a lifetime of debt. We see it in housing, in healthcare, in the simple act of trying to build a life. The story of Vegas is the story of consolidation, where a few massive corporations swallow up everything, leaving no room for the little guy. It's the story of shareholder value becoming the one and only God, a God that demands sacrifice not from the top, but from the bottom, from the customer, from the employee. It's the story of how the very things that made a place unique and beloved are stripped for parts and sold for scrap, all to satisfy the unquenchable thirst for another percentage point of profit on a quarterly report. They didn't just kill the 99-cent shrimp cocktail. They killed the idea behind it. The idea that a business could offer something at a loss just to make people happy, to build loyalty, to be generous. That idea has become a foreign concept in modern corporate America. So when we look at the shimmering, impossibly expensive towers of the Las Vegas Strip today, what are we really seeing? We're seeing a monument to what we've lost. It's a city that still sells the dream of hitting the jackpot, but the price of admission has become so high that most of us can't even afford to get in the door. It's a perfect, heartbreaking metaphor for our times. A place built to be an escape for the working man has become just another gilded cage for the very, very rich. And the rest of us are just left outside, looking in. In the end, the story of Las Vegas isn't about resort fees or the price of a cocktail. It's about what we lose when a place forgets who it is. It forgot about the electricians from Ohio, the dealers who knew your name, the unspoken promise that for one weekend, anyone could feel like a somebody. They traded that gritty, beautiful, human soul for the sterile, predictable certainty of a spreadsheet. And in doing so, they created a perfect, shimmering city that has everything except a reason for the rest of us to believe in it anymore. The lights are brighter than ever, but they don't seem to cast the same warm glow. They feel colder now. The ghost of the old Vegas is still here, if you look hard enough. You can see it in the eyes of the veteran dealers, hear it in the stories told in old, off-strip bars. But it's just that a ghost, a memory of a time when the house gave you a fair shake, not just at the tables, but at the front desk, at the bar, in the very soul of the town. So what is the future of a city built on a dream it no longer sells? And maybe the more important question is, what does its story tell us about the future of a country that seems to be forgetting that same promise that the game shouldn't be rigged from the start? If this story meant something to you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's your Vegas story? Subscribing lets us keep digging into the stories that matter. Thanks for listening.